And it wasn't until my second wife leaving me saying like, hey, I hate you, but something's really wrong. And I vividly remember sitting in my apartment, staring at my gun belt, thinking like, I just want to die. I'm so tired of making these stupid choices so easily. And in that moment, two things became very clear. I need to go to the VA and get help, and I need to go to college. And I thought I hated school. And so anyway, I did both those things, and the mental health unit on the San Antonio Police Department saved my life. And it also was the catalyst that launched me into what I'm doing today, which I'm happy to talk about. But that's kind of the higher level background of my secret sauce is...
All right, everybody, and we're back with another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we're here with my good friend, Joe. So Joe is a former first responder like myself. He was on the other side, though. He was a former cop. I'm a former firefighter. We both dislike but love each other. That's kind of just how it's supposed to work. And now what he's up to in the world, which I will let him dive into more because I know I'm not going to do it justice, but he does very, very high-level de-escalation trainings and techniques. He's taken a lot of what he's learned, not only through being a first responder, but through also doing inner work and learning about mindset and performance. And he combines all of it, and you'll learn about that in a second. My man, Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Vin. I appreciate being here. Shane, it's good to see you. I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. Thank you.
Of course, man. Well, listen, we just gave the viewers a high level. Why don't you tell them a little bit better than I can? What are you doing? How are you doing it? And what's the sauce?
Yeah, so the sauce comes from lived experience for sure. I have had a pretty hard life, I'm sure, like many of your listeners. And, from childhood trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, a lot of issues came from my childhood that I ended up kind of leaving home around 15, 16 years old and staying with some friends. And then my girlfriend, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, her parents finally, my junior year, were like, hey, come stay with us. And I was like, yeah, I would love to. Finally, some stability. And because I didn't have a job, I didn't know how to thank them. I couldn't pay them, obviously. And so then it hit me and I was like, oh, I know, I'll get their daughter pregnant. It was a gift. And that's obviously a joke and you're not supposed to do that. But that's what happens when you have kids living together, right? And so I had my daughter my senior year of high school, and that changed everything for me. I really wanted to go to college and play soccer, but because I became a father as a child, the Marine Corps recruiter came in, swooped in, did a great job selling me the world. And so I signed up to join the Marine Corps, and 4 days after my high school graduation, I'm down in Paris Island on the yellow footprints, and my life was never the same. So, and I think it's important that was in 2000. Hats off and kudos to every active and veteran that joined after 9/11. Like, you knew what you were getting into. I didn't. And I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it, honestly. Like, when I joined in 2000, everything was relatively peaceful. And, I joined really to take care of my daughter. And then 9/11 happened. I've got 1 year in, and now I find myself deployed. I'm over in Afghanistan. I was with the first invasion into Iraq back in March 19th of 2003, and we took over Baghdad. I was with 1st Marine Division, and was like, yeah, this is terrifying and scary, and I don't love this. And so I got out, and as a 22-year-old with no college degree, no real skills other than how not to die, I didn't know what to do. And so naturally, what has a low barrier entry and it's kind of quasi-military is, I guess I'll go be a cop. So I moved to San Antonio, joined the San Antonio Police Department. And the thing that kind of really woke me up and challenged me there was 364 days into my policing career, I got a call for a guy screaming in a parking lot. I showed up. He was there, but he wasn't screaming. He was just staring off into space. I didn't have any mental health training. I didn't know anything about anything except for like just the law. And tried talking to him. He wouldn't engage. I grab him by his arm to walk him to my car. He's compliant. And as soon as we get to my car, he pulls away, punches me in the face, fights on. 7 minutes, 24 seconds before my cover officer showed up. And it took 4 of them to get him handcuffed. And as soon as the handcuffs went on, he died. And so I get out of the Marine Corps because I was tired of being surrounded by death and causing it. And now as a cop, 1 year in, I just attributed to this other person dying. And it sent me into a dark, dark place. I was acutely suicidal more than not. I started using women as my drug of choice, which was better than heroin or alcohol or meth that would ruin my life. And I really became kind of a disaster. And it wasn't until I got to the mental health unit on the police department where for the first 18 months, Vin, I was a hypocrite. And I was showing up every day telling people, take your meds, go to the doctor, do your things that you're supposed to do. And I would go home, drink way too much, trying to sleep, had a pornography addiction, and truly was a disaster. And it wasn't until my second wife leaving me saying like, hey, I hate you, but something's really wrong. And I vividly remember sitting in my apartment, staring at my gun belt, thinking like, I just want to die. I'm so tired of making these stupid choices so easily. And in that moment, two things became very clear. I need to go to the VA and get help, and I need to go to college. And I thought I hated school. And so anyway, I did both those things, and the mental health unit on the San Antonio Police Department saved my life. And it also was the catalyst that launched me into what I'm doing today, which I'm happy to talk about. But that's kind of the higher level background of my secret sauce. Is I've been in the trenches. I've been in the despair of darkness and staring at my gun thinking, I don't want to be here tomorrow. I'm tired of hurting people. And I've been on a 15-year journey of recovery, of realizing like, you know, not to give shout outs to T Swift, but like, hi, it's me, I'm the problem. And so when we realize, and this is why my mantra now as a 43-year-old man is everything is my fault. Like, yeah, what happened to me as a kid wasn't my fault, but everything as an adult is my responsibility. And it wasn't until I started taking real ownership of everything happening in my life that I had my awakening and realized like, damn, if this is true for me, I can help other people realize the same thing and provide that hopeful spark for their own transformation. And so, yeah, happy to talk about it more, but that's just, I wanted to give more context into the background of who I am and why I do what I do.
I forgot you were a Marine. How many crayons have you eaten?
64 green ones. That's right. And with Thanksgiving coming up, you better believe I'm stuffing my turkey with a whole box.
Man's about to get the orange ones.
That's it.
What a story, man. That was I feel like you say that with so much conviction that you wear it as like a suit of honor. I mean, that is that's just amazing. I loved your story.
Thank you, Shane.
I felt like I was there with you through, I mean, that whole lows. And my first question is, and I think we should really dive into it, is what specifically do you do, right? Now that you've overcome, and I think that's so important too, is you've had this, vision that you had nothing else. And the fact, and you hear horror stories about the VA not helping out with, mental health or, just the help that is actually needed. But you actually went somewhere and got that. So I'm glad to hear the other side of the spectrum compared to these, rumors here. But what specifically do you do?
Yeah. And I'm going to answer that, Shane, but I just want to offer this quote since I see you have a quote up there and I'm a quote guy myself. But to tie this in, the quote that I live by is I've learned to become grateful for the things that I wish never happened. And for me, like, of course, I wish I never was sexually abused. I wished I wasn't beaten by my father for years. I wish that these horrible things didn't happen. But you know what? I've learned to develop gratitude for them because I can stand in any room in front of any person, and all those fears and worry of like, what if they don't like me and all that stuff is so far gone now. And because I've had my own journey now where I've been actively involved in treatment for 15 years on some level, right? And for me now, it's like, I don't believe that there's anything in the universe that's just good for one person, because I think that we're so alike. And if something works for me, I absolutely believe it'll work, not just for one or two others, but for thousands or millions of others, because we are so uniquely similar. What I specifically do now, so I own a company called Solution Point Plus, and we are we say international because we're up in Canada as well, but really North American based training and consulting firm. And we say we cultivate mental wellness to maximize human capital and promote safety. And what we're essentially saying is when we say we cultivate mental wellness, we always focus on the individual. So yes, we'll get hired by a corporation. Just a couple of client examples. We have small police departments of 10 all the way up to large police departments of 1,800. Our largest client is the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So there's like 34,000 employees there throughout the United States. And then we just won a contract in Santa Clara County up in San Jose to train the Valley Transportation Authority. And we're training all their bus operators and light rail workers. We've worked for grocery chains. So what we really tell people is if you have a employee base or a partner base or people that deal with a complex set of human behavior, whether it's drugs, mental health, the unhoused population, any of those groups, that's where our expertise is. Same thing on the prevention side, but also on the what we call the care continuum, right? So we want to prevent, obviously, but then we're obviously in the prisons as well. We've also done some work in the court systems. Wherever that continuum of care is where we're going to operate. We teach people about human behavior. We teach about mental health. We teach de-escalation skills. And the model that I've created through our company is based on my experience of working 11 years in San Antonio on the mental health unit. You know, people don't realize San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country, and our police department is the 12th largest in the country. And so I had a lot of experience in those 11 years to where I had over 8,465 human contacts, the sickest of the sick, barricaded subjects, people on meth, knives, guns, jumpers, you name it. And I didn't have one use of force. And the reason I didn't have a use of force is because of the model I created, which I refer to as the CCRTC model. And that's the model that our company uses to teach these skills. But CCRTC stands for curiosity, leads to connection. Connection develops rapport. Rapport creates trust, and then trust gains compliance. And when you understand that model, that's how I was able to get those 8,465 humans, people that were telling me they were going to kill me, people that were telling me I'm not leaving my house unless it's in a body bag. You better call everyone you got because I'm not coming out of my house. And yet all of them walked themselves into my patrol car, went to a hospital when they said they didn't want to go, because I used that model and I created this in hindsight. I didn't know this at the time because I didn't learn it from the police department, right? I just learned about resources and like what we could do legally. But it was in hindsight of thinking about this when I had this company of what was it that was my sauce, as you asked? What was my secret sauce to get people to do the thing they were saying they didn't want to do? And if you understood, and I wrote about this in my book as well, but it's a part of the chapter in there of when you understand that CCRTC model. And then again, the mantra is focus on the person, not the problem. And then the goal is always connection before correction, right? Because if you want someone to do something, you have to have a connection established, or you're going to force them to do it, which is never going to create lasting, sustainable change. And so that's the highest level of what we do. We teach mental health, de-escalation, and then it's kind of, think about it in these 3 categories. We teach mental health, we teach de-escalation skills, and then we do staff wellness and resiliency, which ultimately is our suicide prevention programs. But it's wellness and resiliency, training specifically for first responders, because the greatest killer of law enforcement is suicide. It's not the bad guy out there in the world. So we do a lot to address that internal demon that's plaguing a lot of people.
It's crazy how far you can go with understanding and communication. And that really is so important. That's almost lost in society, especially as technology is kind of taking over. We had somebody on here months ago that was a former hostage negotiator. And I could tell that you guys kind of had similar mindsets on, what you did. And this was for the FBI, right? Then he was the director of the FBI that was a former hostage negotiator for like 30 years.
So Chris Voss?
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I know Chris Voss.
Yeah. Okay. But your mindsets are very similar, but it's you're absolutely right as far as, the communication and the understanding and literally just asking questions from, their state of mind and almost having them get out of that type of mindset by talking it through. I know there's other steps to that too, but it's so important. I love that. Is there any help that you would, or advice that you would give to an individual that maybe is watching this that's not mentally right, outside of the actual system here? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, this is something I'm actually actively working through right now, which is hard, but as hard as it is. And again, as I'm going to share this, please understand that I am also trying to take my own advice here. But something I'm working through in therapy right now is this idea that it's 2 parts. First is when so much of our suffering and I say this with love, I know people don't know me, but truly from a place of love, but so much of our suffering is voluntary. Now, if we understand this through psychology, it's called confirmation bias. Now, if you have low self-worth and you don't understand yourself, or you don't think you're lovable, or you don't think you deserve good things, you're going to make sure that your reality, I tell people, think of your brain as a 3D printer. The world in which you live is the one you have created. And if you have a world you're not loving, that you're not feeling joy with, you're not filled with pride, you're not happy about, it's because you've created it, and you're doing that as a form of sabotage because you don't love yourself enough to change it. And again, that's from a place of love, right? So the second part of that is when you have an expectation of anybody, a spouse, a friend, a colleague, a business partner, a child, a boss, a parent, a president, a mayor, a politician, it doesn't matter. When you put an expectation on a human being, you are setting a future appointment with disappointment. Like, you are setting yourself up for failure. So if you can learn to remove expectations of human beings, the only expectation you should have is of yourself. And that's that you show up for yourself and that you become the most selfish person that you've ever met. But there's a huge difference between being selfish and being a shitty person, like being selfish for selfish reasons and being selfish for selfless reasons. And for me, it's that selfish for selfless. I know I do a lot of work for a lot of people. I know that I help a lot of people without any compensation. I don't invoice people if I just give them an offer of advice or listen to them vent for an hour. Like, I'm not billing that, right? I genuinely care about the people that come into my life. And I have a business to run too, right? So I have to balance that. But at the same time, I have no expectations that anyone's going to do anything different when I train them, when I teach them, when I educate them, when I talk to them, because that is not for me to hold. And that comes down to understanding boundaries, right? Like, I can point you in the right direction. I can show you what's worked for me. I can tell you what I think you should do, but there's nothing I can do to make you do that. And so again, from a place of love, anytime that I think, other than like your genetic predisposition of mental health and all that, but when we look at anxiety and depression, why is anxiety and depression so rampant in our society? Because people live their lives in accordance with other people's expectations. They live in the social media realm where they think that I'm supposed to be further than I am. They're way too hard on themselves, or they genuinely don't love themselves. And when you don't love yourself, you will sabotage yourself by surrounding yourself with mediocre people that are going to continue to validate the belief you have about yourself. And so it's just this like terrible loop that you get stuck in that is hard to get out of until you're willing to do the uncomfortable thing, change your environment, change your friends group, change what you consume, change the way you spend your money and invest it. And until you realize you are the single most important thing in your life, nothing will change. So that would be my advice, Shane.
Let this man cook. Man, this is what we preach out day in and day out. And this question is for, Vin and you, Joe. It's, I am not a coach or therapist and not very well in this field, but Vin and I talked this offline. We've even talked about this on the show too. Why do you think people who are seeking advice, whether it's in a professional standpoint or somebody who is actually qualified to give professional advice, why do you think they don't take it? Is it because they just don't want to hear certain things? Is it because it's too difficult? What have you seen, both of you guys, on that? I'm just very curious. I know you can't control it, but I just don't understand it. It's so mind-boggling and frustrating when I give advice and then they don't do it. And then they ask me for more advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, that's the prime reason why I've never wanted to become a coach, for that reason, but I don't have the patience for that. But I'm very curious on this.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is through evolution, if we understand our brains, it's simply our brain craves familiarity. It craves comfort, right? The motivational triad is seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. So we want to do more of what feels good, do less of what feels bad. And what we know about human beings is there's two things they hate. They hate the way things are, and they hate change. And until the hate for different outweighs the hate for change, it's not going to change, right? And so to me, it really comes down to understanding those two things. Part of it's evolutionary, and the other part of it is people will pay. You've seen all kinds of memes on this on Instagram, but it's like the quick, easy fix. There's like a line of 1,000 people, but it's like actually show up every day and do the work. It's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So to actually hold yourself accountable, people will pay for coaching because they want that person to just continue to nudge them, encourage them, push them, motivate them, remind them, push them, do all this stuff. So they'll pay for that, even though it's like, I'm not going to do any of this. But it feels good to say. And I think the other thing with coaching is that it's a destigmatized therapy. So much of it, it's the opposite side of a therapeutic coin. It's like therapy is if I have problems, coaching is if I'm trying to improve. And so a lot of people will pay money because it like feels good to say I have a coach, which is great. And if you're not doing anything with it, then you're just kind of throwing money into the wind to say something feels good. But that's been my experience of it is we don't like the way things are. We don't like change. And I don't have the skills necessarily to trust, because everything back to my belief is I don't deserve this result. And this is what I think. If you look at people that win lotteries, why are they bankrupt fast? Well, because they don't have the skill of how to use and manage money. And if you give someone something too fast, they're going to lose it because they haven't developed the skill to maintain it. And I think with change, with behaviors, we're talking about human beings who are stuck in what neural pathways, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza says 95% of your life is a series of automated habitual routines. So tomorrow is yesterday, next week's last week, and on and on. So we don't like things to be too different because it's too unfamiliar. It's too uncomfortable. It's too scary. And that triggers a fear. And so then we're like, let's just find our groove. Let's create that neural highway of just automation. And then I don't have to feel unsafe. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, in my opinion. But would love to hear Vin's take.
Well, I've worked with a wide array of people, from like schizophrenics to teenagers to entrepreneurs to 7-year-old kids. And I think that ultimately, like, one of the biggest things that I've come to know about being a professional in this field is that we don't create change in people. We facilitate a space for change to occur. And the problem is that as much as you're facilitating that space, not everybody's ready for the change to occur. Now, could be for a comfort standpoint, like Joe mentioned, which is definitely true. It could also be a big part of people not willing to actually acknowledge or take responsibility for where they're at. There have been so many times that I found therapy to be wildly ineffective for people because all they want is validation. They don't actually want to sit here and say, yeah, I did this, or yeah, I didn't do this, so my life is the way it is. It's just more like, well, my life sucks. And it's like, yeah, but why does it suck? And then, no, I don't want to talk about that. I just want you to agree that my life sucks so I could feel better, because now you validate what I believe. And if you challenge me in a way that I don't want to hear, I'm just going to tell you you don't understand me. Or at least, funny enough, that's kind of some of the responses I would get from clients as I would try to challenge them. So they'd say, well, Vin, I feel like you don't really understand what I need. And it's like, I know what you need. You don't. You think you need validation, which, listen, to Joe's point before, as he said too, is like part of that curiosity and building trust is being able to validate what people feel, and then being able to try to see why they feel what they feel, and then trying to help them, because now you take them out of an emotional standpoint, now help them see some sort of a realization or rationalization as to maybe why life is the way it is for them and how it could logically and factually get better for them. But until you could pull them out of that emotional standpoint, they're not going to be ready for that. So there's many different points where people get stuck on their personal development journey, but that's why it's the personal development journey, because it is just that. It's personal to everyone. There's so many different jumping points. You could be stuck in survival state. You could be stuck in a lack of awareness. You could be stuck in a space of not wanting to take accountability and awareness for your things. And so, I mean, there's a whole wide array, but I think ultimately it just comes to most times that people don't change is because they're not ready for it.
So I think the one big thing that you brought up here, Vin, that I wanted to talk on is the validation aspect. This is what I'm trying. I think entrepreneurship is really the thing that needs to last in the next 20, 30 years as technology takes over most of the jobs in the foreseeable future. Entrepreneurship is going to be very, very big. And this is what I'm trying to train I have 2 kids, but this is what I'm trying to train my 3-year-old right now, is he doesn't need my approval. He doesn't need my validation that, hey, Dad, what do you think of this picture? What do you think about it? Do you like it? Did you do a great job? I want him to say that he did it. I like it. I did a good job, compared to him waiting for me or my wife or his teacher or somebody else to say, you did a good job. And I think we're getting away from this. We're getting away from this mindset that I don't need anybody else's approval in life besides my own. And I know it's very easier said than done, and we all grew up and raised differently, but we're talking about entrepreneurship, transitioning mindsets, and welcoming fear, right? Fear is embraced in my household, right? If we're backed into a corner, it's not, oh shit, it's okay, let's hunker down and figure this out. I think we all need to embrace that in life, and that's how we grow. We grow from failure. So I see what you guys are saying, but I also think completely different here. And I hate the fact that you've had clients that are looking for just that validation. It hurts me to the core. Why even pay for something like that? I just don't get it. It infuriates me. And I apologize if that bothers anybody or any of the viewers here, but I don't know.
Shane, I put a line in my book that says, this is an opinion, but that our public education system is the pipeline into our behavioral healthcare system. Because exactly to your point, everything that our public education system emulates is external validation. It's benchmarking scores, which is not the real world. That's not how the world operates. Nothing in school is replicated in an adult world. In the working, like it used to be when you would go to school and then you go to a factory, right, to put a widget on a belt. But that is all automated, to your point, and it's only gotten so far beyond that now you have people graduating school and they're like lost, looking for who's going to praise me. What grade am I getting? Like they think life is grading you, and the only grade is like, how do you? This is what I tell people, or what I believe is, the only thing in life that truly matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And if when you're by yourself thinking about yourself and you hate everything that you're feeling and seeing, it's because you're waiting for the world to validate what you're going through or feeling or experiencing. And to Shane's point, like until you learn to be your own greatest asset and your best friend and your own greatest champion for yourself, and not from like an egomaniac, like you're an arrogant, terrible human, but also having the confidence to, if this gets hard, I know I have the skills and the resources to figure this out, whether it's reach out to somebody or it's read something or do something different. But when we're sitting back waiting for a system to save us, for a person to save us, for somebody to like come and throw us a lifeline, it's not always there. And that's why I think we have so many people feeling alone, depressed, isolated, because they haven't developed the skill yet of how to kind of self-maintain or find it on their own. And we have too many people waiting for the results to kind of find them instead of them seeking them out.
We talk about losing our bad influences in our friendships. And I feel like this society is so afraid of being alone, especially internally with their own thoughts. So I'm just curious on what you would recommend, because as you're saying, it's hard to get out of your comfort zone. It's hard to, avoid the normals of going and grabbing beers or going and smoking a joint with your buddies that you've known since high school. Right. So how do you get out of this normality of doing the same things over and over again? I mean, Vin and I talk about this too, especially in our earlier podcasts, but, what advice would you give? How can we get out of this norm and be okay or comfortable with ourselves? It sounds like a loaded question, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I to me, it's about understanding truly, not just because it's such a buzz catchphrase thing that people talk about now, but really understanding emotional intelligence, right? To me, emotions to adults are like dirty diapers to kids. As soon as a kid soils themselves, they cry, they tantrum, they do whatever they got to do to communicate because they don't have the words that I don't feel right, get this off of me. And they want to change it. That's what so many adults, as soon as they start to experience an emotion, they're like, change it. Like you said, go drink, go smoke. In my work with first responders, I call this the 4 plagues of the first responder. And again, forgive me for number 2, but I'm going to make a point. In all the work I've done, and we've had a lot of cops in San Antonio that have killed themselves. And my last 18 months, all I did with SAPD was really internal work, creating officer wellness situations, hospitalizing our own cops. And we had 3 suicides in 18 months, and we have a ton of resources, which told me this has never been a resource problem. It's an individual issue. So what is it? And what I call the 4 plagues of the first responder, and this is really probably people, but in my experience, I call it chips, tits, Netflix, and sprints. Now, chips is food or alcohol, overconsumption or under, right? We eat, drink too much, we turn to the bottle. When I say boobs, I'm talking not just female, men, female, male, female, pornography addiction, extramarital affairs, actual sex, even with your own partner. You're like, no, it's just with my partner, but I need it twice a day. Why though? Right? Especially if they're not on board with that. I met people like that just have such a high drive because it's a form of avoidance. Netflix, screen time, doom scrolling, TikTok, Instagram, just spending your time with your face in a screen, and then sprints, even the gym, right? We're in a fitness guru society now, post-COVID, everyone's a fitness coach. Cool. But the last cop I hospitalized was a guy going to the gym 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And his wife asked him for years to stop doing that. He wouldn't. And so she ended up having an affair. He found out, lost his mind. And what I tell people is when you don't listen to someone's words, their behaviors will always reveal the truth. And in that case, his wife was begging him, can you please stop going to the gym that much? We miss you. The kids miss you. I miss you. I'm lonely. Nope. I want to be the strongest cop in Texas. All right, cool. But I've asked you for 4 or 5 years. You're not listening to me. So I'm going to go do this thing now. Right. So why are we doing the things we're doing? And to actually answer your question, Shane, what can you do? I think, again, baby steps matter, incremental change, like big change starts with small steps, right? And so for me, I use Insight Timer, use a free app, use YouTube, but just set the attention. Like I would challenge any of your listeners in the next 24 hours to set a timer for 5 minutes. No distractions, no TV, no radio, no Instagram. Set your phone a 5-minute timer, put it face down and just sit there. You don't have to close your eyes. You don't have to make it weird, but do a 5-minute meditation informally and just pay attention to your thoughts. Don't judge them. Don't worry about why it came up. But when you can develop that habit of seeking stillness, not just when you're sleeping, but truly seeking stillness, just 5 minutes. And when you can learn to master the silence, I think then that answer starts to change of like, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? Because most people are going to go right to whatever is numbing, buffering, and avoidant behavior. And it's usually one of those 4 things, sometimes more. But that's my experience. Learn to pursue the uncomfortable, because I truly believe that if something is feeling uncomfortable, it's trying to teach us a lesson. And like Tony Robbins says, right, directly on the other side of your biggest fear is your biggest breakthrough. So find out the thing holding you back and pursue that. But learn to seek stillness in those 5 minutes a day. Just pay attention to where your mind goes and then see what happens over time at scale. I think it would be really, really freeing for a lot of people.
You know, one of the biggest things that I love about what you just said specifically is I think a lot of people are just so unaware when they say, oh, I hate to be alone. You're never alone, ever. You're always with someone, even if it's with yourself. And when people say, well, I hate to be alone, I always just respond to them. It's because you probably hate the company you're in. And then it always makes them pause for a second because they're like, but I said I hate being alone. And then they realize you actually just hate being with yourself because you haven't spent the time developing yourself into someone you're proud of. And so those very uncomfortable moments that you face in the 5-minute meditations are those moments where you're thinking, am I good enough? You know, I hate this thing about myself. Have I actually done anything? And then this is where people start feeling bad. You know how Joe, you've probably seen this a lot. People hate on you when you start doing better than them, but not because of the fact that they're intrinsically jealous. It's because now you're creating this awareness within them that you're not doing crap with your life. You're not putting in the effort. You're not putting in the work. You see somebody else doing it right next to you. And now it's going to reflect back on you. Like, what the hell's wrong with me that I can't do what he's doing? And now, Joe, you're this guy who thinks he's so cool because he made it, but you ain't shit and blah, 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 blah. But the reality is they're just talking to themselves, and we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. And so I think your advocacy, which I'm also probably seeing here, is the whole underlying part of your process when you go into these organizations and you help people. But the advocacy is for this mindfulness, these self-reflective practices. Can you give us one last piece on that before we start wrapping up? I know we're almost at the end here, but I think it's really, really important just to teach people or show people, aside from that 5-minute exercise, what do you really do to instill these higher levels of mindfulness and teach people to start working on that journey within themselves?
Yeah, I think that is a great. So the last class that I teach in any of our training deliverables is it's a self-care block, and it's a 90-minute block. And I've got in there the 6 pillars of self-care, but within those 6 pillars of physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional, and personal, there's breakdowns of each one of them. And I tell people purposely, and I'm not a hunter, but I train a lot in the Midwest and they like to kill things, specifically animals. And so I say, hey, this is like a birdshot approach, because I know that people are in different places, right? So if I say to everyone, like the answer to this is do 5 minutes of meditation, and you're sitting in the audience or listening to this right now and you're like, oh, I do an hour of meditation a day, so I guess this isn't for me. Just because, and I tell them all on the front end, just because you're already doing something, don't do more of that. Do the thing you're not doing. Right? Because I think as human beings, and I've seen conflicting research on this, but like the fact that we're only using maybe 5 to 10% max of the capacity of our brains, our brain power, like we don't use a lot of it, because again, we get really comfortable really fast and we just find the easiest path. And so beyond those 5 minutes of meditation, and I know this is gonna it ties into what Shane was talking about with I'm not sure why people would do this, but what I tell people is if someone asks me the secret to life, one, not every hobby should be monetized, but when you can create a hobby, and I think we learn a lot about ourselves when we play. When we're playing, when we're having fun, when we're trying things, when we're challenging ourselves, when we're playing games, when we're doing something, I think we learn a lot. But in our discovery, we learn about who we are. But I think the things that the formula for me is either therapy to figure out, heal what's wrong with you, or a coach to figure out how do I navigate this next step in life. I think that is valuable to have somebody that is seeing your life not from a biased perspective, like your friend or family member that's like, oh, I know everything about you, but someone taking a really, truly unbiased approach to this. I think that's important. Then I think starting not just a 5-minute meditation, but also do something mindfully. For example, tonight, whenever you brush your teeth next, do it with your non-dominant hand, right? Just pay attention to what's happening, because we do so much of our world just automatically. But when you brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand, your brain is going to be like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Oh my goodness. Your hand's going to be moving in a weird way. You're going to stab yourself in the gums. But actually start a mindfulness practice where you're truly paying attention to what's happening. I think, and I know this is a very grand statement, but I think so much of our suffering, our anxiety and depression could be cured by truly becoming fully present in the moment, what we call minimize the sway. Between future tripping and past dwelling, a lot of people are really unhappy because they're dreading the future or they're stuck in the past. But if you focus on what's actually happening right now, like the single most important for me thing in my life right now is Shane and Vin in this podcast, the 1% podcast. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a business owner. All of that is secondary. Why? Because this is the thing I'm doing. And when I have learned to minimize my sway, it is so freeing. Because can I find something in this moment that gives me gratitude? The answer is almost always yes. The fact that I have working technology and Wi-Fi, that I can talk to you from 3 different states, that we're in 3 different locations and we can have this podcast, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that you guys are giving me time to share your platform. Like, to me, that's how I live my life now, but it's so automatic because I've been doing this for years of what is the thing in front of me right now. If you find yourself future tripping or past dwelling, stop yourself. And then the last thing I want to say on this is ask yourself the hardest question you can ever ask, but be honest and just ask yourself why. Like, why am I who I am? Understand that your belief system, your BS, your belief systems were often inherited from family, school, society, people, edutainment. They're not your own beliefs. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you feel what you feel? Why are you mad when you're mad? Why are you jealous when you're jealous? Why are you sick when you're sick? Ask yourself why and truly spend time in that space. It's the hardest question you'll ask, because immediately you're going to want to blame the world. You're going to want to blame your parents, society, the news, the media, your neighbors, your boss, your leader. It's easy to be everyone's fault. But what happens when you realize it's your fault? What happens when you realize that the only and greatest contributing factor to your life is the decisions you make every moment? Like, that is freeing for me, and it's terrifying for others. When you get to the place of realizing acceptance and freedom, I'm telling you that there's beauty on the other side of that. It just takes a lot of consistent commitment and again, having accountability, which is why I love that you have your mastermind group and your chat. Like, those things are truly powerful because people can check in on one another and genuinely connect to make sure you're putting wind in each other's sails, as they say.
I love
I know
it.
that's scatter, but I get excited and I just start talking about what I think. So it wasn't super organized.
No. I think that was there was a great few points that you put out there for people to really start sinking their teeth into higher levels of mindfulness, because I'm in agreement with you. I mean, it's an old quote. I can't remember who said it, but they say all of man's problems could be solved if he could just sit alone with himself in a room for 30 minutes. I believe it. I truly do. I think that, even for people, I don't think you always need a therapist or you always need a coach. I think that they're extremely important, specifically where you might be at in your life, your business, or whatever points you're stuck at. However, I do find that when you get to this level where you are consistently consciously aware and you're consistently in that state of curiosity and reminding yourself, and you're used to spending the time with you could probably just sit in your room and solve your problems, and you don't always need somebody to talk it through. And so there's these different stages of personal development, and I think you've given these listeners phenomenal first, second, and even third steps on their journey for this. So thank you so much for sharing that insight with them.
Thank you, brother.
I love the Albert Einstein quote where he says, "It's okay to ask questions, but if you answer it, that's insanity."
Yeah.
But no, I love what you said. I think this definitely gives a lot of great talking points to our listeners and to even myself too. So thank you so much for this. I'm going to spend 5 minutes after this podcast before my next meeting and ask myself why, because I love myself and being with myself.
Hell yeah, Shane.
Yes.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
Joe, we got two last things for you, and then we got to wrap it here. But
Okay.
basically, the final question that we have for you before the other final question is this one. On the show, we started it with the premise that the 1% is not just about being a billionaire. We believe that being a 1%er is about striving to be the best version of yourself or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in this world. What is your version of a 1% lifestyle?
Yeah, my version of a 1% lifestyle is truly, man, it's as played out and cliche as it is. It really starts with self-awareness. And again, asking yourself those hard questions. And just to create this one last analogy before you push, because I think it matters. But in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons why people don't change is because it doesn't happen fast enough. But if you put a plane on a runway at LAX and they set their dial 1 degree on the runway and they take off and it's flying to LaGuardia, right? That's where it's supposed to go, but it moves 1 degree at LAX. It's going to land in Atlanta, but it's not going to know that it's going to land in Atlanta for a couple states. It's going to take time, but those consistent steps over time are going to yield very different results. But are we patient enough to wait for those results to come? And again, I'm a testament. I've been a father since I was a kid. I've been paycheck to paycheck my entire adult life until I resigned from the police department, decided to bet on myself, started this business. I had $12,000 of work lined up, and myself and Jesse, my business partner, we just poured everything into this because he's got the same life, the same military with me. He's been my best friend 24 years. When I quit the department, he had 10 years on, I had 15. He said, I'm quitting too. Let's do this together. And now to be running a 7-figure business year over year, growing, scaling, we're nobody, right? And if we can do it, I'm absolutely convinced your audience can too. But it's not about winning today. It's not about winning tomorrow. It's about believing you're going to win one day and doing what's required to win today, knowing the results might come later. But you just got to believe in yourself, love yourself, and make those difficult decisions on a daily basis, as hard as it is. That would be my 1%. And know that you matter. And the greatest love you'll ever know is the love you can learn to give yourself. So that would be my takeaway for you.
That quote better be in that book. Because that was a good one. I like that.
Listen, Joe's spitting facts right here. Most people overestimate what they could do in a year and underestimate what they could do in a decade, right, my man?
Amen, brother. Amen.
So, Joe, before we let you go, one last thing. Please tell everybody, where can they find you? How could they hire you? How could they get in touch with you? Where should they follow you? Just shamelessly tell everyone everything about you so that hopefully we get you some business and connections.
Yeah, just the 3 main websites. So we've got solutionpointplus.com, all spelled out. And I imagine these will be in the show notes as well. But
Yes.
but solutionpointplus.com is the business website. joesmarro.com is my personal website. And then unarmedbook.com is the direct website to buy my book. It's also on Amazon and wherever you get your books. But those are the 3 places to get a hold of me. And then as far as socials go, my area of desire is Instagram, LinkedIn, and then Facebook. And so Instagram is Joe Smarro, same thing. We're on Solution Point Plus has a social media for all those platforms as well. But Joe Smarro on Instagram, I'm trying to grow that up. Then LinkedIn, because that's where our client avatars typically are. And then Facebook is just also the personal side as well. But I would love to connect with people. Again, I really appreciate you allowing me to love on your audience today, both Shane and Vin. Thank you so much. And I would love to connect with your audience. And if there's anything I can ever do for anyone, I'm a phone call, email, or ping away. And I love y'all. I love you guys, and be well.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Go give this man some business. Joe, thanks a lot for being here, my man. As always, people, like, share, subscribe, follow, comment, let us know what you think. And we really appreciate you being here, too. As always, I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
That's Shane.
It all the time. You go, and that's Joe. So I got to wait now. I don't know how you're going to do it.
Yes, and that was Joe, and we were the 1%. Bye, everybody.